and welcome to episode 3 of Hardcore Gaming 101's top 47,858 games of all time, where we objectively and definitively rank the games you nominate on Twitter. I'm Xerxes, and I can tell you exactly what Ninja Turtle pies tasted like. And with me on my panel today are...
I'm Satanga.
I'm Bobator.
And I'm Carl.
And on this podcast, we have 3 rules. Rule number 1, all rankings are final, officially, and scientifically accurate. Rule number 2, you can nominate games 3 at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GC9X on Twitter. And rule numero 3, you can nominate games that have already been nominated, but please don't nominate games that we've already ranked. And if you want to know which games have been nominated and ranked, please check out the master list for yourself at bit.ly/47kgames. So without further ado, I think we should just jump into our first game for the night, which is Road Rash. I guess we can do the... They're similar enough, right? We can just
they're
talk
like
about
the same game. I don't think there's a definitive version. I remember playing Road Rash on the Mega Drive and the PlayStation, and I've played the 3DO version.
Oh man, this is another... we weren't supposed to do any more from Jason X. This is another one from @SilentFanatic on Twitter, which we keep doing because he keeps nominating games. But I really do want to talk about. That's okay. It's okay. It's cool. We're
going to have to bar him from the next month at this rate.
Well, we just got to stop. I don't pick games based on who nominated them. Really, I just kind of pick the ones that we've all talked about. We've all played, and so he tends to pick a lot of games that we've all played.
He knows us too well.
It's true. So with Road Rash, okay, so we've all played Road Rash. For listeners who are not intimately familiar with Road Rash, it is a game that combines motorcycles with hitting people off of their motorcycles.
A formula that has been done far too few times.
It's surprisingly, yeah. You can pick up various weapons and like chains and tire irons, and you can also just kick people. And other than that, though, it's pretty much like a standard like arcade racer type game.
It's the second best brawler on the Genesis, below Streets of Rage.
No,
there's a think piece for you.
Yeah, I don't know where I feel like.
Okay, I love the Splatterhouse.
It's not really much. It has brawling elements. I don't know. It's kind of more like a kart racer than anything in a lot of ways.
It's more like Outrun or Lotus Challenge or whatever, but instead of the car, you have a bike, and on that bike, you can knock people off their bike.
I guess
it's like you can be knocked off your bike, and I don't think you lose. You just fall off.
Right.
You lose if a cop car comes by. You can get busted, and the race ends prematurely.
And I think your bike can also be destroyed. That also makes you lose.
So it's basically Super Hang-On, except illegal.
Well, does it have... Well, I'm pretty sure whatever's going on in Super Hang-On is equally illegal. Just doesn't involve as much out-and-out violence. But can you upgrade your bike to, like, Hang-On? I forget.
I think there are some versions you can buy better bikes or something.
If Road Rash 2 where they did that, or maybe the 3DO version where they had that. I don't think it was the original. Because
that makes a big difference in kind of... Because the prize money that you win from the races, like dumping that into bike upgrades is like a kind of... I mean, it's been done, but...
Maybe you could buy new bikes and you just couldn't buy new parts for your bikes, or... There was some detail the first game didn't have. I remember that game was also on the 3DO. It was very similar in gameplay, enough that I'd say you could cover about both games about as well, Genesis and 3DO. I think the biggest difference in terms of gameplay is that the maps had a little more detail, so every so often you might go through a city or a desert. But they played about the same, really, except maybe a bit smoother.
I think all versions did play almost the same.
Right?
Oh yeah, the FMV was... great.
What's the one you linked us to? One of the FMVs from it, where like if you lose a race, like your
girlfriend like
squeeze or whatever
like
at the end of the track, like acts like she's happy to see you, and then she like shoves you away and somehow shoves you to the ground, I guess, and then she like digs in her heel into like steps over you, and then like goes and and gets nice with your rival. I guess that's what happens.
90s kind of thing, for lack of a better word, I'd say.
Pretty low opinion of women, I would say. You lost this race, therefore, not only will I push you down and step on you, I will leave you for the winner.
Well, you should win the race. Quick interjection on Rash,
there seems to be no
2.
indication that you could get better bikes in the very first Road Rash. That didn't come along until its sequel, Road Rash 2, which is certainly an even better game. It's basically like the first, but further improves in the formula. More bikes and more weapons and more stuff going on. Road Rash 3 continuing that, but having like these odd digitized graphics, which were a little bit of a mixed bag. But the series does have some great music, courtesy of Rob Hubbard. And then, of course, when it moved to 3D, the gameplay still continue on. I mean, I consider like the 3D Road Rash more or less like Road Rash 4. It's basically a continuation of the series, except now that they have Rusty Cage by Soundgarden licensed in, so that's a nice bonus.
Any Dragula in there? That was the mainstay, right?
I don't think it was in vogue just yet. It was just before that, but it really should be.
Pre-Dragula racing game era.
But, Road Rash is fun no matter what. It's, I'd say, one of EA's best properties that doesn't seem to be made anymore. But there was this one Kickstarter for what was called Road Revolution. That is like a sort of independent revival of the series that's like not actually licensed, but it's meant to be more or less a throwback. I don't think it's fully finished yet, but it seemed promising last time I looked at it.
I think part of the reason Road Rash as a game doesn't really come back is it required a particular formula that's not really popular anymore, because as I said, it does kind of feel like Outrun and that sort of game. It is that like 2.5D racer or whatever they call it. Because of the way you got to line up next to your opponent, you got to sort of smack him. It's much harder to work this sort of game in a true 3D sort of environment. It doesn't blend as well, and it starts to get very...
You are still, it is basically a straight line, even whatever the map says. Like you're going up a hill, and then you're going down a hill, and you're going up another hill, and then gradually downhill.
These kinds of racing games were really popular in the 90s, like kind of the race to get better upgrades and then race more, and kind of... There are a lot of games like that, and I think they kind of get repetitive pretty quickly, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, Super Hang-On did it pretty early on, and that's about as good as like the genre got, at least before you added in like kicking and punching.
I'd also put games like Top Gear in that kind of genre, if anyone remembers those.
But definitely. Road Redemption thing is available on Steam. This is not an endorsement, it's just someone has tried to make a new version of this game. And we should try and rank this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, gladly.
So without the upgrades though.
Yeah, like this is probably it's the first Road Rash, but it's probably the weakest maybe because it lacks any sort of staying power even compared to because it's a pretty light game to begin with.
It's not even super hang-on. It's regular hang-on.
Yeah.
Plus kicking and punching and tire irons and chains.
Yeah, there's not too much reason to play the original when 2 just basically looks and plays like it, but offers a fair deal more depth with the purchasing and whatnot, so it's going to lose a few points.
I feel like we were in a similar situation here with NFL Blitz. Where it's like it's the first iteration of the game, it's historically significant, it was very well made, but it's also clearly like not as good as it could be, especially if you factor in like what they were able to do with just the second iteration of it. So
like I know from my personal perspective, I would much prefer to play eSWAT. Like that's just me. I know if you gave me eSWAT or the original Road Rash, I would prefer eSWAT. Like
I would put it below Uniracers. I think Uniracers stays interesting for longer as a racing game.
Nestle it in between eSWAT and Haunting starring Poltergeist, another EA game, appropriately enough. How's that sound?
Xerxes is concerned.
I think I'm outvoted, so it doesn't matter.
Do you think it should be higher or lower?
I'm like I said, I'm torn because I feel like I love the Road Rash games, but you're right. If it's not at least Road Rash 2, it's not.
Because you were imagining because like the chain apparently only shows up in Road Rash 2. The chain is not
there
in the
you
original
go.
game.
Okay, I'm not even thinking about the right game here. All right, so it's Road Rash 2 minus the chain and the buying stuff.
Yeah, it's like you get to ride bikes.
I
and
do
hit
like
people
that chain
with bats.
too.
The chain is really satisfying for some reason.
better than the
all
cloth.
right. So we're putting it below eSWAT and above Haunting, starring
That sounds
Poltergeist.
pretty fair to me.
Moving on, we've got Caverns of Khafka, which was nominated. It was one of the very first games that was nominated. And its nominator was, just a minute.
I hope he doesn't take the whole minute.
This is Steven Eider, right?
Hey, Steve.
At Steven Eider, EIDHER on Twitter. Is a longtime friend of the show. So, although I kind of question that because Caverns of Khafka is, let me put it this way. Like, this is a Commodore 64 game. It is made by kind of a legend among early Commodore 64 programmers. What's his name again?
Paul Norman, and he has quite a history.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Like, his first game, I think, is like a, I'd consider it to be like kind of a minor masterpiece, Forbidden Forest, right? It's a very kind of cinematic game. Involves shooting things in a forest with a bow and arrow.
Well, plenty of people consider it like one of the first survival horrors, so it gets a pretty big nod from the general industry.
I mean, this guy's a vision guy, right? Like he has grand ideas for a very limiting platform, and so. In no way what I'm about to say is a criticism of Mr. Norman's like worth as a person or programmer. However, I do question what is the name of this? Is the Cosmi is the name of the publisher here?
That was the name, yes. COSMI.
If you're listening and you were involved in Cosmi back in when was this game? 1984.
Yes, or around the crash.
My God, what were you thinking? Like this. Okay, so this game is Caverns of Khafka. Is I think Satenga, you had the line of the night. Would say it is truly a Kafka-esque experience.
I did say that with a wink and a grin and a shine in my tooth.
Yeah, it's pretty true. It is probably the most alienating game I've ever played. In terms of like, because I've played games that are like unplayably bad and just inscrutable in like crash your computer kind of games, but this is
as bad as a game can be while still being a game.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So
there are worse games. At least this one has an idea and a concept, and it has interesting ideas to it.
Well, it's not boring. It's just a Kafka-esque mess. It's insane.
So I feel like this is one of those games where while it was being programmed, every time the guy would run into a new bug, his answer would be to just create another bug that would like supervene the original bug. And so you have stuff like you can really you can die just by walking downhill. Okay, well I'll just make it so you can jump indefinitely. that kind of attitude. Like, and you can jump indefinitely. You can walk
your jump
through
just
air.
resets in midair.
You can get your head stuck in the ceiling.
I really don't understand how these rope physics work. It's like it just slowly goes up, and then you can Spider-Man leap off of it without swinging it first.
It's nuts. So this game is kind of like a really bad version of Spelunker. It's less forgiving than Spelunker. It's ostensibly based on an Atari
8-bit family, like the Atari 800. I'm actually looking that version up now, and it seems competent.
It's totally different. It looks more. That one really looks like Spelunker. This one,
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like if you wanted to prove a point about how bad Spelunker wasn't, you could play the C64 Caverns of Khafka. This is a game that has no like collision detection to speak of. You can just get absorbed into walls and
but you can
die.
get hit by an enemy at any point. When there's an enemy on screen, and it might just hit you.
It could just hit you. Yeah, you could just get hurt just by walking.
This entire game feels like it's put together with tape, because everything's kind of constantly juddering and shifting, and the physics are just indescribable, and it just...
Well, yeah, as Xerxes was saying, it's like it's a programmer issue, which it's like an old one where instead of fixing a problem, you just write something custom to fix that specific issue, and that never works. It just everything explodes, and that's the whole game. That's like,
right. These are hats on hats here. They don't. Nothing really solves the problem. It just.
Isn't that basically how a Ponzi scheme works?
Kind of. This is like this is like the coding version of a Ponzi scheme. Wow. I mean, the thing is that nothing that gets done really. Let's step back a minute because we're getting way over. We're talking about.
We're getting pretty in depth.
Yeah, what this game is it's basically like a small room and little. I don't know what they are, like ingots or something. Will just kind of randomly appear. And they'll be randomly dispersed. Sometimes they appear in the middle of a wall or something where you can't reach them without dying. Just to give you an idea of how fair this is. And you're supposed to grab like all 6 or however, or 4 or 6.
I think it's actually 6 or 8.
Yeah.
5.
Oh yeah, there's
5?
It's like a cross shape.
Yeah, that's
or something.
right.
And then you take them, and then you're supposed to bring them down to the bottom and set them in next to these like pharaoh statues or something. And if you get them all in, then you win, and that's it.
No, you don't win yet.
No, you fight this, quote unquote, fight this giant like golden pharaoh
that's
thingy
right.
that I don't think I ever figured out. I mean, I'm looking it up here, and I still don't know what the hell they're exactly doing. It kind of doesn't.
Normally, if I miss like 50% of a game, I feel like I maybe shouldn't be talking about it. This is an exception because I don't think that. Like
yeah, I'm not sure this is even 25%.
This game doesn't redeem itself very often. It is like, a very convoluted thing.
It's kind of like Forbidden Forest, and that's got cool music, at least for a few seconds of music, and then it just replaces that music with like a ear-splitting screech. And
I think that's supposed to.
Is that supposed to be?
It's supposed to be the bat that shows every so often, but I can't even tell for sure.
Well. Yeah,
I was wondering if that was in there for atmosphere, if it was an actual glitch in the heart.
So, like, apparently, like, the manual, it was supposed to be, like, a tracker to get you closer to the ignites, but because that's not real at all.
It just makes you want to run away from whatever's causing it. That's what it does.
Why can't just put, like, a pointy arrow?
Or you could just do, like, the standard boop, 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 that kind of thing.
Yeah, but the ignites are 100% random, and they just appear at random. So
so it's like you get within like earshot of one of these things, it just goes.
This is an accurate depiction of the sound. That's not an exaggeration.
It is. I didn't know Xerxes' voice could go that high. Honestly,
it's really hard for us to describe this because it really is just the strangest thing. Like, you have to watch a video of this to understand just how ludicrous the whole thing is as a game and as an experience.
We were talking about this, like, going back to the publishing aspect of this, like, how could this be on store shelves? Like, this is a great evangelist for Nintendo of America's, like, super draconian license and restrictions. Like, this is way worse than any game that I've ever played for the NES or Famicom. It's worse than Super Monkey Dive. It's worse than Convoy no Nazo. It's worse than anything I've ever played.
It was games like these that actually, caused the Western video game crash.
I think you're being a tiny bit harsh.
See, this game probably, I imagine, I don't know if they sold this in the US or more Europe, but since console game wasn't really a huge thing in Europe at this time, everyone was on microcomputers, this was the kind of thing they were playing.
Yeah, but, the thing about this is, I think that even though it's insane, it is not completely boring. I mean, there's lots of games that I think are more boring on the NES and on microcomputers.
That's true.
This game has something.
Like Bird Week.
Well, I mean, in terms of boring, no game that just screams in your ear periodically can be considered boring. So, I mean, that's kind of like cheating. But, yeah, I agree, because when I first saw, somebody, when Steven suggested this game, I immediately looked it up because I never heard of it. I was like, oh, this looks really cool. I really want to play this. I thought, I wonder what it looked kind of like it reminded me kind of like of a Pitfall 2 type thing is what I was seeing. But then you actually play it and you realize, oh, this is like the second or third time that you die in midair or get swallowed up into a wall and can't get out, you start realizing what kind of joke he was playing on us here.
It is kind of a game where you think you're doing something wrong at the start, and then you realize that no, the game is wrong.
You really don't play a game like this. You just kind of immerse yourself in bugs and piercing screeches for a few minutes, and then you give up.
I do think that this is a good example that Mr. Norman was very close to one of the first, I guess, indie or alt sort of game designers, just a really, really specific, almost punk mentality where it's just I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it. It's going to work, maybe. And
another reason why I don't criticize Norman himself is because he's been very clear that he did not know what he was doing when he was programming his first several games. He's like, I wasn't a programmer. I was more of a musician, and these games I treated as making kind of little movies. And so there's his other games. What's another one? Was the Aztec something or other?
Aztec Challenge.
Yeah, that's pretty well remembered, I think. And like I said, Forbidden Forest is a cool, interesting, creative game. I don't know how much fun it is, but it's definitely he's a high concept guy working in a very low res medium, and so you got to give it to him. So
the games are hugely fascinating just to look at.
They're very cinematic and
they're interesting.
That's what definitely. I think makes this game so frustratingly terrible is that you can see the germ of a good idea here, and it's just interesting enough that you kind of want to keep playing a little bit just to see surely there's some trick to this, right? No, there's no trick to it. You are just...
Well, there are tricks to it, but they don't make the game more fun. They're just breaking the game to finish it.
The game... I don't even know how you can consider a game like this. How can you break this game? You...
If you walk backwards and forwards, apparently it will eventually spawn the ignites, right next to you. That's how the spawning algorithm works.
Oh.
And I'd say that's probably the best way to play the game, because there's so much to just instantly pop out of nowhere and just kill you.
Apparently, yeah, the whole thing is just, it is... This is a game that's balancing on, the world's, tallest Jenga tower, and if the moment you stop playing it, you're screwed.
It's kind of game where I feel like it could infect other C64s in the same room with viruses just through the open air.
Needs to be warned.
I mean, the thing about a game like this is that, yes, early Commodore 64 games were not very sophisticated, and yes, people sold some real garbage, and people played it, and people kind of liked it, but the fact of the matter is Pitfall existed when this game came out. Pitfall had been around for at least 2 years, and if you'd played Pitfall, you would know that getting your head stuck in the ceiling is not normal. That should never be happening. It's not like you have to make a game as good as Pitfall. That's not likely to happen, but seriously, you should know, people, it's not like people didn't know what a good, platformer was like. And, and you had games like Spelunker and other stuff like that, which were much more, again, you don't get your head stuck in the ceiling in Spelunker. All the things that can happen to you in that game, head ceiling stuckness, not one of them.
Apparently, Paul Norman would eventually go on to work on Home Alone 2 for the Genesis, and that's kind of sad. That's H.R. Giger retiring to, cereal box art or something.
I'm just picturing Joe Pesci with his head stuck in the ceiling.
I mean, that sounds
As a
perfectly
counterpoint,
reasonable.
though,
It's the perfect use of his talent is to the game where the enemies go through walls
and never come out again. That's the thing. The funny thing is that the game, sometimes the walls will spit you out, like trying to do the collision detection thing, and they'll spit you out, and then you'll just be like, you get absorbed into a purple wall of rock, and then it spits out a skeleton a couple seconds later. It is evocative, it's an amusing thing to see. So I guess the question is, we're clearly down in the Amagon Eek the Cat range here, I think. And I guess the issue is it worse or better than a completely forgettable game like Eek the Cat? Because
I was going to say, how can we rank things based on ironic appreciation?
No, I think for my case it would be genuine appreciation for such a strange attempt.
Let's put it between Amagon and Eek the Cat.
I think it's better than Amagon. Come on, Amagon?
I hate Amagon.
Do you get your head stuck in the ceiling in Amagon?
I'm willing to put Caverns
between, not above.
Okay. No.
Does that happen in Eek the Cat? Okay.
No, I would put Khafka above.
Here's my reasoning.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Eek the Cat is just a licensed game that not only that is a sprite swap of another game. At least Khafka is kind of original.
I would put it way above those two.
Yeah. No, it's definitely better than Eek the Cat, and I think better than Amagon too, because Amagon is just really unremarkable NES platformer that I have a personal grudge against, so I do anything to downvote it. And Caverns of Khafka, for as bad as it is just so outlandishly bad that you're not going to forget it.
Okay, well, wait, all right. So there are other ways of considering these games, all right? It's not just like, is it more memorable? Yes. Also, shooting yourself in the foot with a nail gun is more memorable than this game. So,
I would
these are memorable things that I would never want to do to myself again, So, but the other thing is, if you were going on like a 7-hour plane flight and you could only take one game with you, Eek the Cat or Caverns of Khafka?
I would take Khafka. I would.
You're serious?
I would take it. Because that game, it'll help you get to sleep. You'll have great dreams.
Khafka will not help you get to sleep. If anything, it will get you ejected from the plane.
So you have to turn off your device. The plane is now underwater.
Is it causing interference with the... No, we just all freaking hate it. We hate you and we hate that sound. What is that? Is your pacemaker failing? What is going on? What is that sound?
Stop crying and just start staring at you come on, man.
It sounds like a smoke alarm in your house is going off, is what it sounds like.
It's actually what I used to wake up in the morning, so...
But if you go well, which game would you rather play? The answer is kind of neither, really,
No, there is a clear answer to... If you have to pick one, what is it?
Yeah, but if I had to pick one of these games to purge from video game existence, if I went, one of these two games is getting thrown in the forever furnace, I would not throw this game. I would throw Eek straight away, instantly. Wouldn't even be a decision.
I can see what you're doing here. All right, that's a worthy competing consideration.
Yeah, because you can go your whole life without playing Eek the Cat, and it will not impact your ability to play games ever. But you just
or you could play Caverns of Kafka, and it will impact your ability to hear people in the same room.
Yeah, you'll play it, for the rest of your life. I was wrong about every game I ever said was bad.
That's okay. All right, but you got to understand what kind of box you're opening here, because there are many other games that.
Well, this game is
you could say the same thing about,
and so. I know Seniority, we've done the opposite. We've put Galaga super high, and that game was superseded by other games in a similar way. I think this game is so early and so it belongs to that period of time where they just made such odd games. The fact that this game was released by, I'm not going to say a major publisher, but this game, you could buy this game on shelves. This game was considered finished. That's interesting that they made such a strange game. I just think, I don't think it deserves to be below Eek the Cat. I'm just gonna say
Eek the Cat is a playable game. It is a game that you could pick up and play without...
Yeah, but you don't want to. You don't want to play Eek the Cat anymore.
I don't want to play Caverns of Kafka.
We are giving too much attention to Eek the Cat.
I'm just saying that
think.
at least this game has a creative idea. It's not just a quick cash in.
It's like, give us your money. That's the game. It's like, we want to take your money because you like a stupid cat game. Like, that's it. That's the whole game. It's creatively bankrupt.
Kafka has passion. Okay? Yeah,
all right. So it's going... Is it...
You're out voted. All right, I'll compromise and place it below Amagon, much as it pains me.
Amagon also vaguely resembles the game.
At Eat the Cat.
This is more like performance art.
Look, I'll give you Amagon is also like it's a unique game in that they made a game. It's not just licensed trash. They tried to make a game.
Amagon's got the cover art too. It's got the boy with the machine gun growing into like a little Abner style like hillbilly He-Man.
So Amagon lets you turn into a He-Man muscle pink man in the middle of the game. I'll give it that. Eek the Cat doesn't do that. So, we got to put it above Eek the Cat, but not below.
Yeah, for as much as I hate Amagon, I'm willing to definitively give Khafka a place just below it and above Eek the Cat, because I am tired of hearing you guys say Eek the Cat so damn much.
We should mention that Amagon, Eek the Cat, and Khafka were all given to us by Steven. So thank you, Steven, for...
That's true!
Steve, please be nice. This is getting a little gruesome. I mean... I'm sure you don't hate us that much, and this is all just a happy little fluke.
What kind of diseased mind comes up?
He's one of our listeners. Let's be nice.
I'm sure you take that as a compliment. Okay, so next on our list is Rainbow Islands by Taito. We're going to be talking about the coin-op, even though I think most versions of this game are pretty much the same. I played the port to the PlayStation mostly, but it was nominated...
I'm pretty sure most people played this one would have played it on something other than the arcade in general. I don't think it didn't have nearly as big an arcade release as, a lot of other types.
I'm not sure. Our sponsor was at Phoenix_Red on Twitter, who I don't think specified which one, but I just assumed it was the arcade. But I mean, this was we should just throw this out here. This was put out on just about every microcomputer ever made.
Supposedly the Spectrum version is supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, it hit the big three for British computers, the Spectrum, the C64, and the Amstrad CPC. It was also released on the FM Towns and the Wonder Swan in Japan, of all things. So that's a pretty diverse reach. Among the more conventional
the big three
systems,
for
like
British microcomputers. I was trying to think of what was the third one? Like the video telly. The
Amstrad
video telly
kind of
Junior.
counts. Jeez. Let's not patronize the British audience here.
Careful spot of Rainbow Islands on your Video Telly Junior.
Oh man, that's it. They've stopped listening now.
Video
We just
Teddy.
lost everyone. They're gone. Stop. Oh man, that was crumpet eating.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like kind of a pseudo sequel to Bubble Bobble. I mean, it's called this continuation of Bubble Bobble, but I don't really It's really a prequel.
There's not really a strong canon to Bubble Bobble in general. It's like
no, we can hash this out. The Bubble Bobble lore is. I'm sure people care about this. No, but I mean, whatever it is, it is clearly
it's a spiritual Predesecchi sequel. It's absolutely
Predesecchi sequel is we're gonna have to use that again.
Okay, but if Bubble Bobble has a canon, where does Bust-A-Move fit in?
I feel like that's kind of like
Bust-A-Move's a prequel to Bust-A-Groove, right?
No, we're talking about Puzzle Bobble.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really weird naming thing that they did. Bust a Move had to be changed to Bust a Groove because Puzzle Bobble was called Bust a Move. It's a very
I feel like that's like a offshoot timeline where they died in Bubble Bobble, and that's their like hellish Sisyphusian task is like endless Puzzle Bobble games, and they just keep.
You just have to shoot the bubbles, and then you'll be free. Just shoot the bubbles.
How many of these things do you think we can make? Lots and lots. Is there a new platform out? Game.com? Put it out there.
Bubble Bobble's actually, not Bubble Bobble, sorry. Puzzle Bobble is a brilliant game because it doesn't really get affected by screen tearing at all, which is why it works so well on the handheld systems. But that's kind of an aside.
Yeah, so back to Rainbow Island. So, I mean, we all know that not Puzzle Bobble. Bubble Bobble. You just saying that name just makes you feel like maybe they didn't think about the name very carefully. Bubble Bubble. Bubble Bubble.
Well, it's memorable.
If you can say it, you sound like freaking Mushmouth when you whatever. So yeah, I mean, Bubble Bobble,
one of us,
was a single screen platformer type arcade game. You shoot bubbles and you capture enemies and can jump on the bubbles that have enemies in them, and there's a lot of invisible fruit to pick up. And then you move from screen to screen. I think at the very end of the game, there's one boss battle, right?
It's a simple experience, but
you can do two player at the same time, which is I think what it's mostly remember. And you're not antagonists. It's not like a Joust or Mario Brothers thing where it's like you hate each other and are competing for invisible fruit.
This made a big difference on like the cooperative. Although I don't think it was cooperative on all the home.
Were they lovers? Those two dragons?
Remember.
Like, did they? Was this like a? I guess not, right?
The dragons.
The dragons.
Bob and Bulb.
Bub and I guess well maybe I don't know, maybe this is a very forward thinking game, I'm not sure, but it's.
I admit I'm not like a huge fan of Bubble Bobble, mostly if like your main method of attack, blowing bubbles, it kind of feels somewhat inconsistent. It actually works. Like I've had times like I blow a bubble into somebody and they bubble and then I try to jump into them, they just kind of push to the side and it's really kind of awkward.
Are you supposed to hold the jump button, I think, and then you can usually bounce off them?
I'm trying to pop them. They just get pushed out of the way.
Well, then release the jump button.
I mean, I have.
It's a little fiddly, but work with it enough, and you'll get used to it.
Unfortunately, the game that was nominated was Rainbow Islands, which.
Yeah, and I admit it had the same issue there with attacking in Rainbow Islands.
Actually,
I mentioned that.
I mean, okay, so for the people who don't know, it iterates on. Or expands upon Bubble Bobble in that Rainbow Islands is not quite a single screen. You can kind of go up on like a vertically scrolling platformer. And it's kind of like Ice Climbers. I would compare it to Ice Climbers. In fact, I feel like Ice Climbers is, if it weren't for the crazy, frustrating jumping mechanics in Ice Climbers, it would be a more... that I would prefer that game to this one, but you, instead of shooting bubbles, you shoot rainbows, and which is kind of cool because you can climb on the rainbows and you can launch rainbows off of other rainbows and create like a giant rainbow ladder, and that's how you get up through most of the game. And you attack enemies if you shoot a rainbow and the actual substance of the rainbow hits an enemy, it'll kill the enemy. If you shoot a rainbow and it goes over the enemy and traps them inside, you'll kill the enemy eventually, but it kind of stays there for a bit. It's the invisible fruits are back for some reason, and at the end of every so many stages, you get to the top and there's a boss fight, which are incredibly frustrating. And my problem with the game is that the rainbow shooting mechanic, although it's cool, especially when you get like the double and triple rainbows, and you're just like rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. It's like all the colors of the bow. It's really cool how it works. But the frustrating thing for me is that there are so many enemies coming at you in later stages of the game that it's when you're trying to kill an enemy that's on the same platform as you or hit a boss. And then you've got these rainbows that are just sitting there for a couple seconds. And if you try to move forward to avoid another enemy, you'll just walk up the rainbow and get hit by another enemy. And it happens to me so many times. And maybe I just suck, and I'm not sure how I can hold it against the game, my sucking. But
well, it's like like Bubble Bobble is like a twitchy game. Like it's very twitchy. You shoot bubbles, you jump on enemies, you do it rapidly. Enemies move pretty quick by the time you get through it. The Rainbow Islands is the same way, but you don't have to worry when you shoot a bubble in Bubble Bobble. Like, you shoot a bubble, that's done. If it hits an enemy, that's good. If it doesn't, whatever. Most of the time, you're fine. In Rainbow Island, if you place your rainbow and you don't think about your placement, it might be like, oh, actually, I died now.
Oh, right. And also, like, if you're in the air and you shoot a rainbow and it's not attached to something like another rainbow, it'll just disappear. And so you'll think that you're going somewhere and you're not, So
you kind of like, it's more fiddly and it needs more planning, and it is like a fast-paced-ish arcade game, so it doesn't necessarily fit comfortably.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to be too down on this game because it is like a creative and whimsical game, and I really like anything that comes up with a platforming mechanic that you don't really ever see anywhere afterwards. The rainbow generation thing, but
well, no, it's very clever. I think also, an expert on British computers can step in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the big sells in this game was that the arcade port to at least the Commodore 64 or the ZX Spectrum and a couple of them, it was like a really, really strong port. Like, other than obviously like colors and things, it was almost arcade perfect. Like, it was really well done. I seem to remember that being a big selling point, was like, it was top notch.
I recall seeing an Amstrad port of the game that looked really good too. Maybe I'm confusing it with one of those, but...
well, the Amstrad one might have had full color as well, because that had good color on that system.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was, so it's a cool game in that and I can see why it was popular on microcomputers for the reasons you said. So I don't want to dump on it, but it's also kind of like the boss battles really get to me. Like, you're fighting like some giant ass slow moving helicopter or something like that. And then you're like,
I'm not 100%
this is a
sure,
game,
but was this the first one of like the Bubble Bobble types by Taito that had like quite a few bosses? Because the later Bubble Bobbles had a boss like every stage, I think. But I don't know if the other games that they made of this type before Rainbow Islands had bosses, so they might have just not really sort of
they were kind of just...
I'm not sure if Taito did. It just feels like the sort of game that doesn't actually really need bosses, because this game feels more suited to actually the climbing idea than the actually fighting.
Right.
Like, you can just dash by enemies, but like when you have to stop and take care of this enemy is much faster and bigger than you for several hits until one of you dies.
Yeah.
It feels jarring. It doesn't really feel like it accompanies what the game's about.
Because your core mechanic is not really an offensive mechanic. It's kind of like, it is for climbing as well. Most of these other games, you've got a purely offensive weapon.
Right.
So
I do appreciate that. I do
really
like
cool.
that your main attack is how you do everything, from traversal to combat to finding secrets.
Right.
And this game has a ton and ton and ton of secrets, just like Bubble Bobble.
Are they like big secrets, or are they like, oh, there was a banana there?
I got 10,000 points from this banana. It's the greatest game ever.
I believe that much like the original Bubble Bobble, there is like a secret ending that you have to be really on the lookout for.
I hate when games do that, I'm going to be honest, because it makes me feel like I lose even if I win, and like, this is some obscure crap I had to look up in FAQ in advance, like, stand here for 7 seconds until a giant red ball floats above, and then, like, stare at it for 10 more seconds until
Bomberman
explodes.
Secret logic, right?
And then you get like 1/12 of the gold medallion to get the truest of platinum super.
To overcome the spider's curse.
I'm not fond of
Bible verse. I mean, I agree with all those things. Like, I feel like just one more note on the bosses. Like, this is the most annoying kind of like arcade platformer boss, which is just the big ass thing hovers from left to right over and over until one of you dies. It's even worse, I think, than the Monsterland style bosses, which are like dragon jumps up and down in one place and shoots fireballs at you. Like, those are two things I feel like are really poorly suited to this kind of game. But
yeah, I mean, it does let the game down a little bit. Ultimately, that's the
So I feel we have been talking about it a little bit too critically, though, because There's a lot of good to be said about it. It was rather innovative for its time, if not kind of tricky to handle, but it's very colorful, and it's charming. It's certainly emblematic of Taito's later 80s
ladies.
Man, I love them
arcade
Taito ladies.
output. My words are falling apart, but yeah.
I think one of the reasons we're being so harsh is just because
this?
it's a Taito game, and this is not their absolute best one. And Taito did so many great games in this exact genre, and this is just not the best one.
This year gave us two of my favorite. 1987, the year it was released, also had Operation Wolf and Rastan, two of my personal favorites. And Rainbow Islands just doesn't rank quite as high. Maybe I just like more like badass looking games.
Crave
like
blood,
that. I don't know
violence.
Yeah, I'm terrible. No, but I love the original Bubble Bobble. It's just I'm sad that Rainbow Islands doesn't do quite as much.
And I'll also
I
also say like why. I don't like that the Bubble Bobble characters look really unique and cute, and then like the Rainbow Island and I think even the Parasol Stars characters, which was like the next game, are just like little munchkins.
Yeah.
They don't really.
Those are actually Bub and Bob. They're freed of their curse. It's just I want them to stay dragons. I like that look a lot more.
Well, they kept them as dragons in most of the other Bubble Bobble games because they're like, you know what, people like the dragons more because they look cuter, and everyone likes Bob and Bob.
And Puzzle Bobble was a big hit, partially because of that aesthetic, I suppose.
I feel like that's it. Yeah. Anyway, so let's rank this. I mean, what are you guys thinking on this? What are you guys thinking? You guys thinking? Is this NFL Blitz level? Is this King's Quest V level? Is this Nightshade level?
I'll go for it's better than Eat the Cat.
Oh, come on.
Quit bringing that game up.
A lot of things are better than Eek the Cat.
Well,
Cholera is better than Eek the Cat.
As much as I like Nightshade, I'd rate it higher than that.
It's above eSWAT. It's a better platformer game overall. I think more fun in general. I keep going up the list. Do we go?
I got to put it above Technocop.
You can put it above Technocop. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Technocop
I don't quite remember.
Not about Uniracers, though. I think
can it win in a music fight, or is the music kind of just not interesting in Rainbow Island?
The music is just it's basically plagiarized somewhere over the rainbow with like an extra note.
I think that loses it points.
Yeah, not as charming as Bubble Bobble's constant theme.
Yeah, it's like
I'm glad
way
you're
to go.
Under pressure.
So
all right.
Okay, so I think it's got to go below Uniracers, but I would put it above
Technocop.
Yeah,
I'm absolutely fine with that. That's
Technocop is one of those, like, it's a bad game, but there are so many memorable things about it that you just got to put it up there somewhere. And
it's crazy.
I don't know. I mean, you don't get to shoot triple rainbows. So
well, I think that one thing that's great about Rainbow Island, I think why it deserves its place as a decent place, is just that they did try to really make a unique take on Bubble Bobble rather than just make Bubble Bobble.
Yeah, they didn't come up with something, crazy ass thing that's totally different. They came up with something that feels like a logical, variation on Bubble Bobble's gameplay. So it's like
and the only real flaw is it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, it needed a little bit more time in the oven, I'd say.
I honestly prefer Bubble Symphony, the arcade, more direct sequel to Bubble Bobble that pretty much is the original game but refined.
Oh, Bubble Symphony would end up really high on this list, I think, because that is it's a great
Bubble
game.
Bobble on the Taito F3 arcade system that I love so much.
But below Uniracers.
Well, we may get there later. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So it's going right under Uniracers. Okay, so our next game is going to be, our last game is going to be Space Harrier, which was nominated by @ElectricViking on Twitter. This is a pretty recent one. So I guess we got to talk about the arcade version, although there's kind of been many different versions of Space Harrier, but they're all kind of the same. But the arcade one is the most pure. This is by the great Yu Suzuki, I believe, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Oh, it looks much the same as like Outrun and Super Hang-On and so on. Sega's fair line of 3D experiences that, they've got their style, I tell you
right.
what.
Stuff's coming at you.
I'm just
Thunderblade, yeah.
I'm just
Thunderblade's probably the most creative one, I think, of the way they did it. Like it,
I think Thunderblade's very underrated. That one seems to get a bad rap for some reason.
It's just cool the way they did the like top-down parts of it, where it's like you've got these like kind of looking skyscraper things that are obviously not, but like you can see how they did the effect, but that doesn't make it any less cool, I think.
I'd say all those games kind of worked with their technology pretty well and hid their limitations.
So, I mean, Space Harrier was a very influential game, though. It's kind of like I don't know whether it kind of what would we even call this genre? Like a person...
I just say 3D shoot 'em up. Honestly, it's at its core not too different from games like Xevious and Gradius. It's just that the action is coming to you from a different perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, there's like you can run into stuff, and that kind of changes things. And
well, you can do the same in Gradius, like you accidentally hit.
Well, no, I mean, like don't you just kind of bounce off of stuff in Space Harrier if you? Or no. I'm thinking of World Runner.
Yeah. In World Runner, you don't die if you hit a pillar. You do die in Space Harrier if you run at something. Okay, there's some objects that you just trip over, but for large stuff like pillars, you will die if you fly into it.
So we got to give this game props for just being like totally crazy looking. Like the title screen alone is unreal. It's got the Cyclops and Mammoth.
I love the rolling backgrounds too.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous. Definitely. I mean, you got to wonder, like, it's got the completely crazy Japanese title that doesn't make any sense. Space Harrier. It tells you nothing about the game you're about to play.
Yeah, Harrier.
It's not taking place in space. And
a Harrier seems like something you'd find from your sister Sega game Afterburner.
Right.
But no, the Harrier in question is just this guy who looks like the greatest American hero, and he's able to fly for absolutely no explained reason. He's got a giant gun that has infinite laser shot ammo, and
he fights a lot of giant centipedes.
Oh yeah, centipede dragon thingies and like dodecahedrons and some sort of like crystalline super future like the apple or whatever.
I can't
even explain this game's
there,
yes, that's the one. I can't even explain this game's art direction. It still looks so unique even today. I can't think of any other game that looks like this.
You know what used to drive me nuts about this game is I always got it confused with Fantasy Zone, because this game looks like a Fantasy Zone. But it's not Fantasy Zone. It has nothing to do with Fantasy Zone, except they're both Sega and like really colorful.
Wait. No, at the very beginning, though, it doesn't have like a piece of text that says...
Welcome to the Fantasy Zone, yeah.
That's exactly it. And there was, at some point, going to be a Space Harrier Fantasy Zone crossover for the PC Engine CD. Sadly, that was canceled or unreleased or whatever. I think there's a prototype ROM of it.
I'd love to see like Johnny Blue Jeans like fall in love with the Opa Opa. Like just some kind of like star-crossed lovers from two different dimensions. And I want to be with you, but... You're kind of like a spaceship with legs, and it can never work between us. We're from two different worlds.
I'm kind of surprised that Space Harrier went in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Trend 4, but I guess I don't know what he'd be riding in, because he'd have the vehicle.
He would just be running for all three, land, sea, and air.
Does the gun make him fly?
Well, maybe. The gun just looks like a glowing red hexagon thingy from the rear view that you see him in.
It's possible. okay, so we can talk about, like, I feel like this is one of those games that it's amazing how much it kind of put out there right from the beginning, because you see that games like World Runner and Panorama Cotton, right? And
that was a good one.
And there are several games that kind of
Star Fox.
Yeah, really. Star Fox isn't all that different. I mean, it adds a lot of stuff to the mix, but it is basically.
There's this one by Namco, pretty similar, called Burning Force. I thought that was a very good game, but clearly it was also following the Space Harrier mold, and it wouldn't be this subset of 3D shooting type games without Yu Suzuki to invent it, and to have another generation experience it by making it one of the arcade games in Shenmue fully playable.
Right. So I don't know. It's hard to say too much about this because it's one of those games that I think inspires a lot of affection, and rightly so. But it's also kind of, there's not that much to it. I mean, it's a straight up arcade game. Like, it is a pure arcade game, and it is. I think you almost have to judge it on those terms. Like, I think it's a better game than Afterburner 2.
I think so as well.
Although that's not on the list, but.
Afterburner I cannot control at all. It feels more like a ride than a game. Space Harrier, while very difficult, I feel a little bit more control in my agency, and if I just keep moving and I don't hit a pillar offhand, it feels manageable. I mean, there's like 18 levels all in all, but they're all incredibly short, and it's definitely feasible to see the end. Also, for as many ports as there's been of Space Harrier, I'd say its most authentic one would be the most recently released 3DS release of Sega's line of arcade and Genesis classics, which are all great. You should definitely get them all if you're a Sega fan.
For a game like this, that's the way to play it. Because it really feels like it should be in 3D. It should be coming right at you, right in your face. So, especially with like the giant dragons and stuff that go like back and forth and...
Yeah, every body segment of it is its own sprite. It's crazy how that works.
It's the super scalar trick that they did on so many games, but of that time. But the game. I feel like it's hard for me to say anything bad about Space Harrier, but it's also hard for me to like pretend like it's, I feel like it's in the Galaga range, maybe, but which is.
I was thinking nestling it between Wario Land 4 and Galaga. I might place it even higher. I don't know. That's tricky to decide.
I would put it above. Marvel Land. That's just me.
Maybe it's more of a Snatcher U and Squadron range, really.
I guess I would allow that. It is a pretty well loved game.
I don't know. I feel like I want to put it below Alien Soldier at least.
All right. I guess I have a little bit of attachment to this.
Let's put it above Wonder Boy for originality.
Yeah. So better or worse than Super Mario Land then?
Ooh, Jesus.
This is a tough one because as good as Super Mario Land is, it's its defining feature is that it shrunk down Super Mario Brothers to something that made sense and worked on a Game Boy.
I have a comparison.
Than that, it's not, it has some inventive things added to it. But other than that, it's not.
Here, let me try this. Super Mario Land was, while loosely, it did have a basis on Super Mario Brothers. Space Harrier wasn't really based on much before it came along, and it inspired a lot. So I want to place it even maybe above Super Mario Land for that dose of trend setting.
Alien Soldier, then.
I'm going to place it below Alien Soldier. I have to admit, Alien Soldier is a really good game, and a very, very crazy and creative one for its time as well. As much as I do like Space Harrier, I think this is where the line should be drawn, because there is some definite substance to Alien Soldier, and it's the bosses it throws at you are very creative. The bosses in Space Harrier are just like 15-20 seconds affairs that don't play any differently from how you otherwise play the game.
They just get a little bit harder
and not get hit. Yeah,
I mean, I'd say the same reason. Like, there's even more depth to a game like Galaga, which came out much earlier. Like there's more to say about because Galaga, it's a straight up score attack, right? So
yes,
and then there's like the double ship thing, and there's kind of like it feels like there's more you can get out of a game like that. And Kicks is also like, it's a challenging, first of its kind type thing. Okay, so let's put it below Alien Soldier, above Super Mario Land. Okay, so that's all for this episode of Hardcore Gaming 101's Top Games Podcast. A special thanks goes out to Steven Eider, Phoenix Red, Electric Viking, and Silent
Good old
Fanatic,
Silent Fanatic.
who we by accident keep bringing it back. Not that we don't like him, but...
he just picks games that are too good for us.
Thank you to those people on Twitter. We really appreciate you nominating. We appreciate you following and offering suggestions. We appreciate your feedback. And also thanks to all those of you who we didn't get to yet. You know who you are, and you are loved and appreciated. We'll be trying to get to you as soon as possible. And thanks to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots, which means you guys, Satenga, Cal, and Bobinator. Of course, thanks to our theme song composer, Muteki. I'm really loving the new theme song for this. It really sets it off. It really kind of, the music promises so much more than we could ever deliver. But that's what I like about it. It's bombastic. And how many times do you get to say that? And of course, thanks to the support and feedback of listeners like you. You can support this podcast by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. And if you do, you'll be getting a raw feed of this very same podcast. So you get to hear everything we do, all the garbage that we cut out. You'll get to hear that garbage. So it's like hot garbage straight into your ears. And you also get other benefits. There are fringe benefits of sponsoring HG101 on Patreon. And of course, follow us on HG_101 and at GC9X on Twitter. And most importantly, help us claw our way into the zeitgeist by getting into iTunes and subscribing to HG101 and giving us a 5-star review. Do it, or until next month, keep keeping it real.